old way of doing things versus a new way of doing things. I've had this in my head to do for a little while. I just haven't had the time to do it. So today we're going to give it a try. For the old way of doing things, I brought out my Lyman Great Plains rifle. It's a 54 caliber flintlock here in Pennsylvania. Well, it used to be the only way you could hunt with a muzzleloader was with a flintlock. It changed the rules somewhat, but I've hunted with this a good bit, shot a number of deer with it. Pretty good, pretty reliable for what it is. But being a flintlock, any of you guys that are into the bushcraft stuff, flint and steel, that's how this thing ignites. It's got the lock mechanism here. It holds some black powder in this little pan. It has a hammer, which has a piece of flint locked into it. And a frizzen here. When you pull the trigger, hammer falls, the flint strikes the frizzen, scrapes some sparks off it, the sparks ignite the black powder, the gun goes off. So the application here for fire starting should be fairly obvious. You can use this with char cloth, put a little piece of char cloth right inside here. I'll have to see if I brought my char tin with me, I'm not sure. I can show you how that's done. Or you can put a little powder in here, get it to go off, hold that near your tinder bundle, and start it up that way. Nice little explosion. I need to preface all of this by saying, absolutely need to make sure rifle is unloaded, and there is no powder, there's no ball, there's no nothing down here. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely must do that. And if you're going to try this, I can't stress enough, first make sure the gun's unloaded, and then when you go to try it, presume that it is loaded, make sure that muzzle is pointed in a safe direction. So just in case, the 5 times that you checked it, absolutely made sure it was unloaded, it was incorrect and it was loaded, if it goes off, it doesn't hit anything, you're not going to hurt anyone, you're not going to damage property, make sure it's pointed in a safe direction. Because this does violate some basic gun safety rules. So I can't stress that enough. Make sure it's unloaded, and then when you go to do this drill, this challenge, skill, whatever you want to call it, treat it as if it is loaded. All right. And say that 10 more times and still not stressing enough. There are some inherent dangers with this method, this technique. All right. That said, old way of doing things. You can ignite char cloth. You can use some powder here, ignite some powder on the ground, have a tinder bundle ready to go, and get your flame that way. So we'll try some of those. So that's the old. Pretty self-explanatory. Now for the new. I brought in an AR-15. It's my rifle. But really it can be most anything. It doesn't have to be one of these. And quite frankly, the rifle's just kind of here for show. You don't need the rifle at all for this. So we're going to take this out of the picture, put that down there with a flintlock, and just take the magazine. Unlike the flintlock, you've got a brass case, primer, the bullet, and inside here is gunpowder. The weapon's functioning. Obviously Basically, it sets off a small explosion with a primer, which ignites the powder. Pressure builds up, drives the bullet down the barrel. Hopefully it hits what you're aiming at. The powder in here is, I call it flammable, not so much explosive. If you ignite it and it's not contained in this cartridge case, it's just going to burn. So if you have ammunition on you, like this, you need it as a way to remove this bullet, dump the powder out, and ignite the powder. So, two different ways of doing basically the same thing to get the fire started. One, we're going to be using essentially flint and steel built into a flintlock rifle. The other, we're going to be using powder that's contained within this cartridge case as an accelerant to help get things moving along. So, let me get some things set up. Give these two methods a try. Okay guys, again, I cannot stress to you enough, make sure your rifle is unloaded. Make sure it is pointed in a safe direction, even after you've checked to make sure that it is unloaded. What I've done here is I've taken a little bit of my priming powder, just used some birch bark here as a base, some other crumpled up birch bark. I'm trying to keep everything in place. The wind's kind of playing havoc with me. There's nothing in the rifle, inside the rifle. In the pan, there's a little bit of priming powder. So hopefully this will be enough to get this started. I strongly recommend, again, if you're going to try this, put some eye protection on. The sunglasses that I have are ballistic eye protection. Black powder is highly flammable, more so than the modern smokeless powder. This stuff is explosive. So you need to be careful with it. Make sure your source of powder is well away from where you're working with this. So, without any further ado, let's give it a shot. We're cocked, we're primed, we've got some extra powder down here. I can keep this stuff from blowing away in this wind. It will be in good shape. Woo! Well, look at that, another damn tick. Third one today. That was highly impressive. I singed all the hair off of my fingers. And I don't have flame. Guess what? I'm going to say that was just entirely too explosive to work. It's too much. Birch bark's smoldering, but that's it. Alright, let's try again. Alright guys, we're going to try something a little less dramatic. For whatever reason, none of my char containers actually contain char cloth. Plenty of charred punk wood, and I've never done this method with punk wood. Actually, I'd never tried that method before either. I just figured it would work a little better than it did, but that black powder is a little more explosive. I mean, I don't know. I gave it credit for being explosive, I guess just not enough. It's dangerous stuff to work with. So we're just going to try and put a spark onto this piece of charred punk wood and blow this tinder bundle into flame. Again, not as dramatic, but hopefully a little more effective. But again, make sure that this thing is unloaded, and after you've made sure it is unloaded, make sure you point it in a safe direction as if it were loaded. Let's give it a try. Nope. Stuff's a little too thick. You can see I'm getting sparks, but it's just smashing the charred punk wood. So even if it is catching it, it's not giving it a chance to take. Just too thick. This isn't going to work. I need char cloth for this. Alright guys, give this another try. As chance would have it, I found one little piece of char cloth in the bottom of my tin. It's not a real big one. Hopefully it's going to be big enough. I've done this successfully. I haven't even attempted this in years. I should probably do that before I try and do a video, huh? Again, make sure it's unloaded, make sure it's pointed in a safe direction. That worked great. Ouch! Haha! Hot! Alright. Good. I was going to be ticked off if I had to have total failure with my old portion today. Alright you guys. I'm going to try the new. For the new, I'm going to use a 223 cartridge, 5.56 NATO. For you military and European guys, basically the same thing. What I need to do is pull this bullet out of the case. I've got my trusty Tops Tahoma field knife here, which has this nice little hole here, and that, in addition to being used as a place to put a lanyard if you wanted to, you can also use this as a bullet puller. Andy designed it that way. All you do is put your bullet in here, kind of jam it in there, and wrench it back and forth. Until it loosens up. There you go. Pull the bullet out. Don't need that right now. You got a case full of powder. I'm going to reset the camera so you can see what's going on. I'm going to put it down here in the bottom of a tinder bundle. For expediency's sake, I'm just going to keep using this birch bark. This is a very fine powder. Make sure you have something to put it into. A leaf, a piece of bark, something that's going to hold it. Otherwise, it's just going to go all over the place. Anyway, take my cartridge full of powder. Got a leaf and a small piece of bark set up here. I'm just going to pour that powder into a small pile there. Get my birch bark situated around it. Make sure I've got enough stuff here to feed it with. And get a spark to it. Well guys, hopefully you learned something today. Anytime I come out here and do any of this stuff, I always learn something. I hadn't done any fire starting with a flintlock in years, back when we did rendezvous, and then it was with char cloth. I learned that it's probably a bad idea to use it with black powder. It's pretty violent. Singed most of the hair off of this hand. No damage done, not burnt or anything like that, but it just blew the tinder all over the place. Maybe with better tinder preparation I could have gotten something going, but frankly, yeah, unless it was a last resort, I wouldn't do that. Charred punk wood, no go. It's too thick. Just doesn't catch that spark well. The charred cloth worked beautifully. One strike, and had flame, within seconds. Worked perfectly, just like flint and steel. That's what it is. The new method worked like a charm. I knew that was going to work really well. I know how that stuff burns. Gives you a more extended burn. It's hot. It's really hot, and it'll just torch up anything around it. So that's a real good method to use. Which one's better? I don't know. Either one. I guess for more immediate fire, as long as you have your tinder prepped, probably the modern will work a little better, or a little quicker. The old method, the flint and steel, the char cloth, again, you just need your tinder prepped up properly, and you'll have flame very quickly. So better, I don't think either one of them is better than the other. Know your limitations with them, know what you can do with them, and if you're toting that kind of equipment around the field, know that is a possibility. I used a 223 kit, so you can use a 308, a 243, a couple of 22s. I used the hole on this Topstahoma, which was actually designed to do that, to pull that bullet, but I could just as easily pulled out my Leatherman, grabbed a hold of that bullet, wrenched it back and forth, and popped it right out, no problem. So you don't need a specialty knife to do that. Yeah, that's it. That was a fun one to try. I've been wanting to do that for a while. So hopefully you guys learned as much as I did out of that, and see you next time.